Okay, so our goal is let's make our goal to try and like at least get something that would be presentable in Storybook today. I think that'd be cool.
That's exactly,
Uh,
that'd be great.
and the goal of what we want to update in Storybook is something to do with like the disclosure dropdown component that would allow it to have a nested dropdown. So it's like go from one dropdown into the next. And so far you've started something.
Hmm.
So it'd be cool to see what you have built locally and see if there's either a way that we could either give Claude like the file from our repo and get it to like refactor it to fit the form factor appropriately, or the inverse where we try and take that idea and put it into the repo with Duo. Or if
Well,
it's
you're
completely
gonna,
too far off, then we'll just go from scratch and see what we can do.
yeah, you're gonna love that. I already started from scratch, so I can
All right.
summarize though. I can summarize that. In fact, I might even have the. Let me just 1 second. Let's see if I have any context to share here. Uh, yeah, let's try not to delay here too much, but let's pull up Claude and I can just summarize here. So this was the second session with Claude. The first one essentially ran out of bandwidth, and so I had to start a fresh one. But since it was able to pull context from a previous chat, it did so.
Mm-hmm.
But went through quite a bit. Let's see if I can get a good screenshot early on here. Uh, just going to see what I've got going. Okay, so that was working. All right, so what happened was Claude got really close, and it started
Mm-hmm.
to uh, it was now as like fine tuning, like the CSS was off essentially.
Mm-hmm.
It's I hadn't checked the scripting to make sure that that was there, but it functionally it was starting to come together. Um, and so yeah, we're building a drop down disclosure where you click on a parent action and it opens a nested drop down that should look and behave exactly the same. The only difference is that that nested dropdown is triggered by hover. I know I just said click, but it's triggered by hover rather than click.
Mm-hmm.
Claude was having it do the click, and I'm like, well, let's make this hover. You're nested in there. That's where you're obviously work on focus as well.
Yep.
And in that process, like the styling started to get a bit off,
Wonky.
and
Yeah.
then it was like, no, like there's before that there was plenty of other CSS problems that it was trying to fix, and so it got into this state where it's like opening, but then
Mm-hmm.
like no style, and then it would just expand below, and then I'm like, no, it's like, and I now
Yeah.
it's doing this kind of stuff, and I'm like, well, that's not quite right, and then it's like doing this, and uh, so eventually it got here, and it was just that was the end of my day, and it was like this is
Fair enough.
just it's starting
Yeah.
to regress, and so I was like, all right, I'm going to take a different approach, and this approach was me saying, like, initially giving it a dump, like here is the Figma comps, here's the requirements I've typed up, here's everything, here's
Mm-hmm.
access to the my branch in the local repo uh, that I'm working on. Like, all right, let's make these changes. I'm going to prompt you through this, and that was the outcome. So it got close, but it was just going in circles. So my next, so you proposed, hey, let's do a coding session, and my approach now would be like, I'm going to maybe have it go a little more step by step,
Mm-hmm.
and that way it's a little quicker to backtrack rather than too many things happening at once that I have to wade through.
Yep.
Um, and so yeah, that's the state. So
All right. You want to be the pilot or you want me to be the pilot?
why don't you be the pilot? I know that I don't want to put
Sure.
you on the spot, but I know
That's fine.
you had offered
Yeah.
offered time to do this, and given like I've done this a number of times with different things, I would love to just watch your process, and we can trade off and go back and forth. But
Yeah.
I think before we started the recording, the thought was I'm gonna maybe here work in this step by step method and
Hmm.
probably probably just use Claude, and then I think you can work through your method at the same time. So kind of a dueling pianos aspect, just to see what we come up with. And I think
Yeah.
you've got Duo open, GitLab Duo, and
Hmm.
so we'll see how do we get context into these things, the same context, and how we can at the end of the day have a draft like working prototype in Storybook that we could then move forward and be like, all right, does this satisfy the requirements that we've stated? So
Yeah.
cool.
Yep. And I have no idea if I'll be successful, so that's the fun part about
Same.
it.
Yeah, same.
But that's the whole intent of just trying it out because it's one of those things like we conceptually like know what we want to do. Like it doesn't feel like it should be that crazy, but getting it right is the
Yeah.
hardest part. And I think your example of like kind of Claude kind of got stuck as you're iterating is a good example of just where it can feel like it just isn't working. The funny thing is, like, if you did that conversation again, there's a chance that it just goes perfectly right. Like, that's the crazy part about these AI models is there isn't just like the same experience every time. Like, it could be slightly different, and it could be nothing to do with you as the driver. Just sometimes it works better than others, and sometimes it works worse than others. So
Yeah.
who knows? Um, but yeah, what I've been noticing is nice about Duo lately is it just if I can get it attached to the repo, because obviously you have to open it up with a project in your IDE, it
Hmm.
has at least like the awareness of all the other components. So what was kind of slowing me
Mm.
down in Claude was I kept feeling I had to give it more and more and more stuff for it to have contextual awareness of all the other components. But as Duo's gotten better, it can go parse through a ton of more files. Um, so what I did at least to start was like find the disclosure drop down like coding portion.
Mm.
So I'm pretty sure this view file is what's mostly controlling like the disclosure drop down because it kind of is matching the same structure. Like I'm seeing the disclosure section and
Yep. Your new
all of the
drop
stuff
down
in
just
there.
for sure. So yep, that's important
Yeah, new drop
context because
down,
we had
not
the
the
old one.
yeah,
The old one
yeah,
still exists. So
yeah. I could be like, hey, don't build it like the old drop down.
yep.
Um, I guess we'll see if that comes up as a problem. But I don't know. I probably would start like pretty small. Just make sure that it gets like the right path. I'm also using the agentic chat. I'm not just using like they look very similar,
Hmm.
but there's Duo chat, then there's a Duo agent platform beta with the chat. So I make sure I'm using like the agentic version. Um, that's
Just a
one of them.
question. You mentioned Claude and context. Were you using like the MCP? Like, are you connecting to your local
No, it's just
branch? Okay.
I guess what I was saying was I either would use like the Claude desktop app and give it files and try stuff. But also the default model that Duo is using, I believe, is Anthropic Claude Vertex 4.5,
Okay.
maybe. So it's like you're underneath the hood using one of Claude's models, anyways.
Yep. Perfect. Okay. For what it's worth, I'm using the MCP and I've got it connected to like it's got the context that I've got a new branch open to do the work and where that is locally. So I
So I'm
wonder,
not
oh,
going to claim to be any pro at prompt engineering. A lot of it is just like
sure,
trial and
sure.
error for me.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if you'd be able to just zoom in momentarily on that to capture that prompt just because it'll probably be pretty small in the recording.
Yeah, that's true. I can maybe even like, for the sake of today, increase my font size here. So it's going off and doing a bunch of reading and thinking about it. I feel like my confidence is usually driven by like how good is the first pass.
Hmm.
Um, but what's nice about being able to like build and compile these repos locally is you can just like test them out and get immediate feedback of like, is it actually working? Is it not?
Yeah. I've noticed with working with the storybook, like there's not an auto refresh that I've like Pajamas doesn't auto re reload, but I think with storybook too, I've had to refresh.
Yeah, that's a
Uh,
good point. I did see some, whoops, some documentation about that. Um, because it said that hot reload was not on, but there might be a way to turn it on. Mm.
the other thing, now that you've got storybook up, that I recall from my previous session was that uh, Claude took and it built out like multiple stories for like all these different use cases. And so I had to also scale it back to be like, no, I just want one story, like with one example. It like to go a bit overboard with building the example. Oh,
One thing I think is interesting, just off of its response, was you'd mentioned earlier like you didn't want to mess with any of the API stuff,
hmm.
and its like baseline plan came up with an idea that would maintain compatibility with the existing disclosure dropdown API.
Mm, nice.
And they
Yeah.
didn't have like tell it, so that's interesting that it was like, yeah, let's not try and mess with that. So it didn't do any writing, so I'm gonna try and tell it to do that. I've also seen as like a pro tip, like if the model like does something or responds in like a good way, like you should give it a reaffirming response.
Mm.
I don't, so I, if it does like the right thing, I try to remind myself like not just like give it the next task, but tell like good job.
Got it.
So it broke down a handful of ideas. So it would create a new package and then add styles for nested dropdowns. So I'm assuming it's probably pulling some of the styling from our existing disclosure dropdowns. Yeah. Adds support to the main disclosure. So like just off of like the plan, like it seems like a good place to start. So I'm pretty interested to
Hmm.
see what it does. But getting it to appear in Storybook might be the next challenge.
Yeah. And then, for what it's worth, I'm gonna go ahead. Do you mind if I just share real quick?
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
All right. I'm gonna just provide a little more context for what we're trying to achieve. And then it's because Figma Make has come up a few times. I also wanted to show the prototype there and
Yeah.
explain why, like, shortcomings with that. So basically, just yeah, here's our drop down disclosure, but then now we're adding this nested capability, nested actions, very common in application interfaces. We have use cases for it today, which is why we're exploring it. And I wanted to just provide some high level visuals like, okay, by default, it opens at the top alignment and to the right with a little bit of overlap. If it's positioned on the right, it uses edge detection and flips. On smaller breakpoints, it's more of a nested sliding item. And so I took this into, let's see here, into make. I got some controls here. There we go. And you can see pretty short thread here in make. I just
Hmm.
pasted the Figma frame in here for context. I mentioned that I wanted to make a nested panel. What happens to large, small? It provided the reasoning. Here's kind of something I really like about Figma Make is it provides like here's the reasoning, here's what the user me is asking for, like so it's repeating back to you like what it heard, right? So you understand like where is it coming from when it makes this. So the end result was here's
Yeah,
what I asked for. So this is like this would suffice in a in some level of meaning, to provide a prototype. And I think I can see if I can get this smaller break. I don't know if I can get the smaller behavior to work here or not. At some point, oh boy, open full screen viewer. There is a way where I could, I don't quite recall how I did that before, where this actually should do the nested behavior here. Here we go. It's kind of yeah, okay, it's working. So uh it even handled the it's a little wonky, but it handled that behavior for me. So just want to highlight that Figma Make was
nice.
really accurate and really fast at doing this when I provided the right context. And the reason though I can't use this is it ends up, I think, building just React components. And uh, so that's kind of the reason for that. But as a proof of concept in a prototype, whatever, it would work
Right.
just fine.
Yeah. I think that's a good example too of like if you just want to get the feel for something without having to deal with the craft of like making it work with our code base, I think it's a really good place to start with Figma Make. When you're like, I don't care about it being
Yeah, yeah.
perfectly to the GitLab aesthetic or matching GitLab patterns. Just I want to like see how does it feel to make a drop down interactive in this way. If you don't already have like a good example that you can fall back to as like a reference point. And then yeah, when you want to try and get it into the code base, that's like an entirely different problem. But now Duo's finished, so let's jump back into that because it didn't quite get to where I wanted it to go, but hey, we're making progress. So it thinks that it made a hover activated nested dropdown, and my storybook now has a nested dropdown option or disclosure, and it looks like there is one, but when I go to it, like it just closes the menu. So
Okay.
I'm like, all right, it thinks it did, so now I got to try and work with it to get it going. I always think th this is something funny that kind of been coming up lately. Like it started like creating like these example markdown files. I don't particularly know why. I don't know if it's like give itself more context, but I think this is more of a new thing some of the models are doing. So I just kind of
Interesting.
ignore that. I wouldn't keep that long term.
Hmm. Uh, so so my experience was very similar. The first result that I had, not just now, but previous, was like, okay, yeah, I've done this. And as soon as I go to click that nested drop down, it ends up just closing the entire uh, thing. So I think there's
And
like
we might be on a similar path, just using because we're basically just using Claude underneath the hood.
exactly. So, but I mean, I wanted to highlight uh, that there are similarities, right? Like already, like
Yeah.
we're not divergent in
Hmm.
the output. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. Meanwhile, I'm over here in Claude just working through some prompts, so and slowly giving it context.
Uh, It sounds like a silly thing, but I don't know if it even is still practical, so I'm just gonna try it anyways. But sometimes just telling AI to think harder improves outcomes. So
Hmm.
I'm embedding that as well. Um, but I think the other thing I want to say is I don't think two I think 200 milliseconds is probably too long on hover. So I'm gonna give it a little suggestion there too.
Yeah, one of the things I had failed to do with my initial requirements was indicate how much I could leverage what existed today. So like existing speed,
Mm-hmm.
existing styles, like
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so that's I think where one of my missteps early on was just assuming that it would take what was there and build off of it rather than trying to do net new because it even did net new like border radius and shadow and I'm like, well, why aren't you just using what exists? And then it's like, oh, you're right, I should, uh so providing that up front is I noticed was helpful. But
Yep. So what I'm seeing that's interesting in analysis from Duo is the nested drop down. It's closing because there's a like a click handling that's
mhm.
interfering with it. So like the parent, I'm sure, is just the disclosure drop down, and it just assumes like when you click on something, close the drop down. So there might be some logic it needs to override in the condition where there's a element that is actually a nested item and not just a singular regular item. So one thing that we don't have with Duo necessarily is the concept of like artifacts like you do in Claude, where you have like versioning of things.
Mm,
My personal hack has been like if I get a change, I'm like, oh, this is good. Like I like where this is at. If Claude or in this case Duo starts doing the wrong thing, and I don't want to have to like revert the whole change, I'll stage what I have because then anything that it does next will be a fresh block of changes. I can always discard those and keep the ones that I've staged. So I kind of like do small increments of staging. I'm like, oh, this is good. Yeah, let's keep that. Oh, this is good. Let's keep that.
mhm,
Oh, no, you totally screwed up. We can throw that away, start a new conversation. And I just tell it like, hey, look at the diff, figure out where we're at. And it's like, oh, okay, I see what you're trying to do. Cool. Where do you want to start? I'm like, great. Cool. We can pick up where we left off. Because one thing I was running into with Claude was like I would work so long in a thread that I would hit like the limitation on it, especially when I'm like passing back really big files, which happened a lot in the monolith, where some of our view files can become like gigantic. And so that consumes a lot of resources. Because it would give you initially like, hey, like update this line and update this line. Like this takes way too long to manually update individual lines. So I would just ask it to update the whole file so I could just copy and paste it over. But that just spends a lot of tokens, I guess, or at least
mhm.
burns up my usage pretty quick in the storage of a single thread. So
Meanwhile, I'm still figuring out getting some Git changes that just want to keep hanging around. Hmm. Earlier, before we started recording, we discussed the difference between providing visual context. So visual context to Claude, I can paste any image or whatnot. Uh, and so we were discussing how you might do that with GitLab Duo. And you had a few ideas. One would be to put an image in an issue or the MR and then reference that, or to maybe even add the image into as a new file in the repo and just have it point to that and say, check this out. So I don't know if you, how you thought about trying any of that in here ahead of time, or
Yeah, I mean, we could go ahead and try. I'll try
I
it
don't know
in,
if it would help at all, but
um, let me see. Just for the sake of experimentation here, I'll use a different repo. I'm just going to throw a picture from desktop. I have this image. Let me copy its relative path. Mm. Oh, let me know where it is in your code base. Let's see. Yeah, says it cannot.
hmm, okay.
But I've had a bit of a different effect when I've been using Duo in the web. I think mine got stuck in um, the design repo. So let me stop it and see if I can get to go again. Okay, sometimes what's weird is like it gets stuck on like one of the tool calls, but like it technically says it finished. But I'm seeing a bunch of errors. Starting to get kind of slow. I can see it's like really stuttering on the animations. Pretty surprised. We haven't been working with it that long. I'm just gonna copy one of these errors from Storybook so that I can know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
In general, both Duo and Claude are pretty good at helping fix this kind of stuff, which to me has been like the best unlock because I would break something and go, I don't know. I don't know what I did. Uh, this syntax is far too complicated for me. But it's
Yeah.
generally pretty good at parsing its own stuff and being like, oh yeah, I'm silly goose. I shouldn't have done this. So let's see if it can fix it.
So what while you're working on that, my prompt was basically just letting it know, hey, I've got this new branch. This is what I'm wanting to do. Uh, and I just let it know I can provide written requirements. I can provide images. There's also a
Hmm.
prototype in Figma Make I could provide. I don't want you to do the work. I want you to walk me through it step by step. Like, and then I asked it
Yeah,
like, what do you need to get started, basically.
like that. Yeah.
And so it let me know, like, okay, send over the requirements. Like here, send over some visual examples. Where's the component currently? So it's that's another thing I found to help is to give it some information and then say, what would you like next? Rather than just assume that it wants certain things. Uh, and then, let it kind of tell me like, okay, this is what would be most helpful. So that's what I'm doing
Okay,
right now.
it's still working, but I mean, look at this. We got
Okay.
something.
Yep. It's working on hover. It's just some styling. Interesting. Yeah.
It's a little, it could get a little funny. How did I get that? How did I end up in that state? Like, its positioning is a little funny. Um,
Just a little bit of delay, like timing delays, and
but that is a promising
I
first pass
wonder,
there.
is this like the hover intent kind of deal where when you're going from item with submenu, the first one, and you're traversing diagonally down to that nested, it's triggering the hover on the second.
So it's doing something funny.
So, if you like, if you're just trying to like, unless you go like straight over and down,
Mm,
that's what it's doing.
mm-hmm.
It's hitting that other one first.
Oh,
So that
oh,
the fun,
oh
uh,
no, not that.
the hover intent.
Oof. This is the same exact problem we faced with navigation. We had to write some very fun logic to make that work
Yeah,
nicely. But that is a good reminder though, because I could theoretically go find that file where that calculation lives
hmm
and tell it to use that same sort of calculation. Okay, it's doing that thing where it just like thinks it's still doing something, but it's not. So let's stop.
Yeah, the other thing. So sometimes I notice Claude will be like, "Oh, cool. Could you just share those files with me or do this?" And I'm like, you have access. Like, go look yourself." And then it's like, "Oh, right. Yeah, let me do that." So it's just some like things you just get used to at doing that
Mhm.
you just kind of expect. So like, uh, yeah, like that's silly. Like I already told you where these files were. You have access. So yeah, the hover intent that's an interesting one. I actually hadn't got far enough to even consider that, I suppose, in the iteration I was working on. So, all right, cool. So Claude now has an implementation plan.
So I'm like decently pleased with that implementation. So I just went ahead and staged the change just so I keep it locally. And I'm gonna do just
hmm
like a small tweak. Like I don't want these dots there. So
Sure.
let's just go ahead and clean up that. Yeah, they're pulling it just from some of the DOM styling of a UL list element.
So Claude, even though I said I want you to walk me through the steps and not make changes, here it is now. Like, great, I've edited this file and I've done this. It's gone ahead and like made changes and probably has started committing them to. Let's see. Interesting. Okay. Hmm. I'm just gonna let it go though. See what happens. it's hard to tell from the screen share, but do you feel like that's using the right chevron icon?
Let's check it out.
Run right,
Yeah,
small.
did I run right?
Nice. That's great. That was something that I had to instruct it to do it first as well.
Okay, so like I think it like base functionality, sure, it's there. But what we were kind of talking about was like we kind of wanted to be able to just basically access another disclosure dropdown. Like I think what would be beneficial is if it's just like disclosure dropdown to another disclosure dropdown or to a
Hmm.
list box or something. Um, I'm assuming what it's done is kind of compose like its own like we've got a disclosure dropdown, we've got the collapsible list box. I think it's kind of like created like not a tertiary one, but like a sub version of it, which is why I think the styling is creating custom styling and stuff for it.
Okay.
But I wonder if I can get it to refactor it to just use the same thing again, if that would
Yeah.
improve it. But this is one of those points where I'm like, okay, I want to stage these in case it
Yeah.
completely
Yep.
breaks it, and we can go back and go, all right, maybe we'll take a different approach here.
I think that's an interesting point you bring up. And I know I'm being a bit like verbose, just because we're recording and whatnot, but so you can shoot me down if I'm going off the rails. But I think it's an interesting point, like the role of Git and like staging the files and changes. Like when you're working with GitLab Duo and being able uh, to to backtrack. Same
Hmm.
with Claude. Claude will like if I've had it where it'll just commit for every single change that it makes, and then it makes it really hard to backtrack. Or, I mean, it's different if you're working in a repo and it's making the changes versus creating artifacts that you can just go back to a previous version.
Yep.
And so, uh, that is a great point you bring up, though. To just like once you're like, okay, this is a good, like we're comfortable here, like do something to save that state so that you can always go back to it or reference it. I
Yep.
think that's really helpful because even if you have to start a new session, like you run out
You
of
don't lose everything.
you,
Yeah.
you don't lose everything. You can be like, okay, pick up where we left off here. Like, here's the
Hmm.
previous thread for context. Yeah, it allows you to do some of that kind of stuff too. So
Yep. And I mean, you got to do a few tool approval calls. It'll ask you to approve a few tool calls so it can run like a
yeah,
git diff to see what happened. But yeah, like sometimes they'll even like commit the change and then I can stage a new batch of changes. So that's when I was talking about in my presentation, like think about it almost in batches of small commits as if you're kind of like building this history, because then it just makes it easier to fall back and forth. And then if you get to the end, and
yeah.
you're like, oh, I'm really happy with the whole change, then you can just lump them all into the same commit, no problem. But if you batch it up a
Hmm.
little bit, then it's easier to find that versioning point that you want. Um, but yeah, it's kind of nice 'cause you do just get like all the power of Git. Not that I am a advanced Git user at all, but I'm sure for engineers that's way more powerful than just like basic
Yeah,
version artifacting in Claude. And I've
yeah.
never really found the artifacting versioning very reliable in Claude either. Like sometimes I would go back to a version like it just like doesn't work anymore, or like it's not there, and I'm like, maybe it's gotten
Mm-hmm.
more stable. But consider to say what do is continuing to do to me is just gets look like it's getting stuck. But I don't think it's actually stuck. Let's see. Nah, okay, broke something.
So my challenge with Claude at the moment is in my very first prompt, I said like I don't want you to do the changes. I want you to walk me through this. Um, yeah, I specifically said I'd like you to walk me through the changes step by step rather than you doing all of the work. And here, like for the last 5 minutes, like Claude has now just been running through the plan and doing all these things. So it's it's kind of repeating the problem that I ran into the first time where it's like it gets so far down this track that we don't have that step by step process to fall back on. Like, no, let's go back a step and redo this step. It's like,
Hmm.
I've done all the steps. Here we go. And so it's a bit like frustrating to see that it's just like really eager to like I don't know if it can even be eager, but it's just not responding to the fact that like, no, I wanted you to walk me through this step by step so that we don't do this rather than like it going through this. But we'll see. We'll see what the results are. Oh, okay, so got an error. Okay. So I built something, built out a nested drop down story. And it's at the same point that you were a few minutes ago, where clicking on a nested item just just collapses it. So I'm going to remind it, though, that I did ask it to walk through step by step and not do the work.
Like we're stuck again.
Cool. So this is interesting. So I reminded Claude. I was like, "Hey, this is what I had asked," and it's like, "Oh, I got carried away." And uh, so then it summarized, like, here's the current state. And then it asked me a list of questions. Like, before we proceed, like, do you want to learn more about the changes I made? Should we undo and start over more methodically? Or do you want to start, test where we're at and move forward? So that's kind of an uh, interesting process. I suspect that it's already used quite a bit of the session. And I don't know all the terms for like,
Me neither.
for all of the I used the term bandwidth earlier, and I know that's not correct, but all of the whatever it's using to uh, just indicate if my session is maxed out or not. I suspect it's used quite a bit of it. So this is where I get to that point of being really cautious with changes and a bit nervous and like, if I start asking this and it starts fumbling, like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting to the point where this thing is just hanging. Like, I think it's just really struggling. I don't know if I'm hitting some sort of limitation. Oh, okay. Maybe it's just slowly getting through it. I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick. All this
yeah.
finishes.
While Austin's away from my part of things, I'm I've told Claude to pause and like we'll go to where we're at. Let's go through things step by step now rather than it making wholesale changes. And it's brought up a few things that I'm going to have it update, basically running into the same thing that Austin did earlier, where flyout opens, but the nested item trying to click to access it doesn't work. And I think that's where I can uh, deviate it to make that work on hover instead of the click, so that that click action isn't problematic, at least for this next step. So
All right. Back with coffee. Still got errors. All right. This thing definitely stuck. So I think at this point I might
something.
just like
Oh,
abandon this
good.
chat and start a new one if once I can get it to like code not being broken.
Maybe. Another thing that Claude prompts me to do that I find is helpful is like check for console errors, because
Yeah.
maybe so I definitely keep the console open as well, just to
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
also give it anything going in there. So
Yeah, something that I've done with Duo when like coding a feature in the monolith is if I need to like make like some sort of API call that's like non-existent on the page or pull some data that doesn't exist yet on the page, we'll sometimes use the console as like a means for validating like are we getting the response or is it the front end that's not like showing it. So it'll sometimes like inject some
mhm.
console messages to be like, hey, like, did you return this string? And then I can be like, oh, here's the text of like, no, it's an empty array. And it's like, oh, okay, then I must have this wrong.
Yeah.
because it's just making some guesses too. But yeah, being able to pass that back and forth is super helpful because like I don't remember how to make things other than just use console log, but that's I don't know how to write the rest of the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this chat is just coming to an absolute crawl. So we're gonna start fresh here. Mm. Okay, so the example where I was gonna ask for a git diff tool call to approve. This usually opens up like a little terminal in VS Code. And you can see it's running git diff. You can know that's doing that. It's definitely missing the diff of the stage changes, so I'll have to make sure it knows that. Gosh, you really stuck? What's going on here? Oof. Sometimes when you hit stop, like, doesn't actually stop it, and then it gets stuck. No bueno.
I should note, like the reason why I'm going this route anyways, like this is probably something that an engineer could do rather quickly, just on their own. Uh, but just for the sake of prototype, I wanted to see like how quickly could I get something, in place? Could these
Yeah.
tools speed up this process? And my gap is in the like messing with the API and like extending it without making any migration changes. Because that's something I've run into before where I'll change something and not realizing like, oh, like this is gonna lead to migrations. And so
Hmm.
just having using AI to do that, I think is what one of my goals was. So like if it was down to
Well, I
just
mean,
styles and like, the disclosure and the JavaScript, like that's fine. I could do that. But the other
yeah.
piece of it is, yeah.
Um, I think what's good about this exercise too, one, like it's just we're learning and like you kind of have to have like a real world example to play with to feel like you're at least that's how I like to learn. I like real world examples, even if they don't result in merged code.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but even like playing with it in Storybook, like you brought up a good example of like, oh yeah, like we got to think about the invisible zones of hovering from left to right. And like, oh, when you go down to like the next item, like, and you move too quickly, you can end up with like overlap and weird conditionals. These are not things that are very easy to annotate or explain in Figma, and honestly could be an easy oversight.
Mm-hmm.
But I think where the benefit of like even playing with it in the code is you realize like, oh, this is where we're going to need some help. Because like at the end of the day, like engineers are going to have to go write this, and then they run into the problem. And they go, hey, like I'm noticing like if I move too quickly, like the menus pop up and they're kind of like over each other. Like, what do you want us to do about that? Um, and those are just little details that we can often not think about. We're like, oh, this is just so easy. Just another disclosure dropdown next to the first disclosure dropdown. Like, yeah, but there's more to it. And even like the viewport positioning too. Like, what if it is too small? Or does it appear because if we assume it's gonna be on the right, but what if there's not enough room on the right? Like we often use drop downs in like the sidebar of like an issue. But if you were to have nested options in there, then like it's gonna appear to the left, most likely if it's on like the edge of the
Mm-hmm.
screen. So stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Golly, man, it's really struggling today. I don't know. Like maybe these changes are just really big, and that's what's slowing it down. But it's really not. It's really crawling.
There's probably others doing pairing sessions with.
And I don't think it's my machine. I mean, I guess that could be possible. But I quit GDK, which is usually like a somewhat of a resource hog at times. I mean, my load looks pretty low. Like, sure, Zoom's taking up a good amount right now, but I guess for a second I'll stop sharing and see if that lightens its load at all.
Yeah.
Sometimes when this has happened too, I just like completely quit VS Code and restart it. So I'm gonna do that and see if that helps it like kill some threads that maybe are stuck.
I think that would be interesting is if the tooling itself could like have a tighter feedback loop. Like why can't why can't Claude go into um, Storybook, open the thing, look at it, take a screenshot, whatever, and bring that back in itself, like that would be one of those things where like that could speed up some of the debug or
Yeah.
some of that.
I mean, I'm definitely not a engineer on the AI side of things. I think there's both like the limitation of like what are websites or applications allowing these models to come and do on the site. So that could potentially be a restriction. But I think that like next skill ability to AI to allow to like, go and like perform actions is like getting there, but it's not quite capable enough. So it's probably holding it back. I think that's why MCP servers have been so popular because they kind of serve that like intermediary state where it can go and figure stuff out on its own.
Hmm.
Because I mean, right now it's just mostly just like a large language model. Like it's just taking in a bunch of words and then parsing it and figuring it out. Some of those words are written in code, some of those words are written as a blog, some of those words are written in other ways. But like getting it to like review images or like perform actions and stuff is like an entirely different task.
Just had a thought. I don't know. I'd have to ask somebody on the team, like one of the engineers, but this is just like an aside. I'm like in Warp, I'm in the design.gitlab.com directory, but I know that GitLab UI is in packages. So I'm running like yarn start full from that base directory. I wonder if I was actually in packages GitLab UI and ran uh, yarn or storybook or whatnot, if I would actually get like an auto reload. So I feel like we used to have that with GitLab Duo. So maybe it's just
Yeah,
that I'm running that from the wrong place.
no, in the README there's a description on how to get the hot reload to run. You just have to
Oh,
like
cool.
start it differently.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't enabling hot reload just to try and like keep the computer
Mm,
from freaking out. So I don't care. I can refresh this page. That's fine. Um, Especially with
yeah, I
this
don't
vibe
mind either.
coding thing. It's not like I'm like testing like do this text string update. Nope. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not like trying to tweak CSS right now. I'm just trying to completely recompile the feature, which would be probably annoying for it to continually try to hot refresh. Okay, so I've gone back to my old chat thread because I just could not get, for some reason, a new one to pick up on where we left off. Like, I don't know why it was getting hung up on reading the diff. Maybe it's just like too big of a diff right now for it to not stuck in a hung state.
Mm.
I'm taking a different approach instead of like telling it like just do another disclosure dropdown because it's getting hung up on the specifics of like using I think another disclosure dropdown inside disclosure dropdown is creating like this recursive loop that's causing things to break. So just for like you said, like the sake of experimentation, I'm just gonna tell it to try and style it the same way because I can just like tell it's not using the same. Like it's got like a border, it's got less rounded edges. I'm like, let's just see if we can do that. And then I think the next thing I'm gonna try and get it to do is like tell it like, hey, like the hover action works great, but there's no keyboard access. See if I can get it to handle that. All right, thanks. It did everything. Okay, there you go. Looks better. Okay, okay.
I'm I'm getting close to where I was last or man, I don't know if it was last week or earlier in the week when I was working on this. Um, Working through some styling problems, and because there's some inheritance, like if it tries to do the same styles, well, the panel by default is hidden, and so then like the nested one, it's like, oh, here it is, but it's still got the hidden, property on it, uh, and then I'm also trying to commit changes and running into like linting problems. So doing a
Oh
pause,
yeah.
having it go back to do some lint fix so that I can actually commit the changes because I can't even save this current state until those
Mm,
things are resolved. So,
yeah. And I when I run into that, I tend to ask it to like resolve the linting errors for me. It's like, oh, here are the errors I
mhm.
got trying to push it. It's like, oh, I see. I left an extra line here. My bad. That's an easy one, but sometimes they're more confusing than that. Um, Gosh, where did I swear Mark and I worked on this? Maybe, maybe it was Thomas? There we go.
I think this is one of those efforts that like it clearly highlights like if we wanted a proof of concept that's okay, Figma make is like, yep, let's do, let's do that. If we want production ready code, uh, like this is not faster than than having engineering handle it, at least to this point.
Yeah, and it's so hard because like sometimes you don't know until you try
Yep.
one of those things. But I think what makes the approach with even trying it locally and putting in a merge request is that it has, I think it has two interesting effects. One, I think you meet engineering a little closer to where they like to work.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
you're already like they will rapidly pull down a change, no problem. Ask them to play around with the prototype in Figma, and like it's gonna be a little more awkward, or yeah, they can see it in a Figma make prototype, but then like they have to go translate all that to code. If you can kind of show them like what files we're touching and hitting and some of the just like the direction, then I think it creates an interesting discussion point to start from because it's already starting to incorporate the language of our code base.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can kind of start to see the impact of the size of the change as well. So maybe even gives engineers like a little bit of that first like spike effort of like, oh yeah, this is probably going to be, a 7 as opposed
Yeah.
to like
Yeah. Agreed.
because sometimes like we can describe in design language as like a 1, but as you start to get into the weeds of everything, you're like, oh, actually this is more of a 7 to get all these interactions right.
And you just to key off of that too, there's several things along the way that we highlighted that uh, the design specs and intent are, unless you've kind of made that CalPath before, you're not gonna think through it like the hover intent or uh, like the some of the CSS inheritance and whatnot. So I think that also just that practice allows you even quickly to be like, oh yeah, these are some other things we need to consider as
Hmm.
part of the output. So and I'm like lifelong learner, so I'm not
Same. Yeah. Well, see,
opposed to doing
I'm
this.
still
So
at the part where I'm like, it would still take me so long to create all these screens, annotate them, and write them in a comprehensive way. Like right now, I'm like even just trying to describe like these keyboard actions. It takes so long. But I wonder if like, I mean, I'm just using it as like an example, does like putting it in a code change make it that much more clear to an engineer? Because they're like, oh yeah, I can see like you've got a section in here that's supposed to be handling the key down events. Oh, we're missing a couple other aspects here. I can see how we can fix this. And I don't know if it's still in our handbook, but that notion of everything starts with a merge request.
Hmm.
The intent behind that is it kind of creates like a little bit of pressure because the code changes, it's that much closer. Like it's just a merge button away from being in the product. If the code's 80% of the way there or 40% of the way there, maybe the lift is a little bit less.
Yeah.
Um,
I think for this kind of stuff, yeah, it does make sense, right? Like, um, it just makes it more actionable. We just culturally, like there are so many issues and proposals and whatnot that getting to the merge request step is like it shows some intentionality of like, yeah, we're wanting to solve this.
mhm,
And yeah, it's a it can be an easier starting point for some of these items because an engineer can right away be like, okay, spot, like this is the wrong approach. Here's how we let's do this, and like let's nail it the right way. Or they can be like, oh yeah, that's close, or I see what you're trying to do. Let's push it along, or whatnot, or weight the effort, whatever it might be. So I think for something like this, it does make sense.
mhm. I mean, it realistically, like I think you picked a pretty hard one, considering the complexity of a drop-down component.
I didn't think it's that hard just because it's a nested disclosure. Like I think if I was building this from scratch, it would be a lot easier. Like, hey, I want a new component to do this. And maybe that's the option. Like maybe like we don't need to have like this extension, maybe it's like, yeah, you know what? This should be its own thing. Maybe that's the conclusion. Maybe that's, what somebody else would come in with and say. Um, so maybe that those uh those things are just too tight of constraints or whatnot. I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, I mean, I'm even learning as I go. Like we don't handle like left and right arrow keys in our drop downs currently. So like it's having to add in some extra constants because we have up down, we've got, space home enter, but it doesn't have any left right. So like that's like a new thing technically.
Which it shouldn't need to for this because in a disclosure with actions like tabbing, like arrowing is a little more like form control or options like list box like. So considering this is like a disclosure with tabbable actions and you're not doing any kind of like what's the term I'm looking for? Not what is it? It's like essentially where you just retain the focus location, like you might do in like a radio group or something. Uh, you don't. It's just a little different for this. So like if I was doing a review of that state, I'd be like, I don't think we need that arrowing. I could
In
probably.
an app that shall not be named, it uses arrows or tabs.
It's probably
Right
not bad. I don't know.
arrow,
Trevor, I
like
think, I guess it's not
like as you're
necessary, but
moving focus, as you move focus through, it visualizes the nested drop down, and then you use an arrow to jump into the menu or the left arrow to go back out of it. Tabbing brings you to the next item in the list of stuff. I'm gonna tweak it just to kind of at least like match that model for now. It's the so
so I was able to commit changes and now I'm back up to close to where I ended before, where starting to really get into CSS problems in it, not quite understanding the cascade.
Man, I don't know if it's like a bad day or what. I'm not connected to power, I guess. Something, I don't know. But dude doesn't normally hang this bad on me. It
Yeah.
must just be like a mammoth of a change that it's writing.
Another interesting approach would be to say like I want to create a new disclosure dropdown like that does these things, and then from there you'd have an artifact
Mm,
that you could say like, okay, what's the net difference? GitLab Duo, like, can you actually take this behavior and extend this component? I know the term extend. We talked
no,
about that
yeah.
one earlier. Can you just add these capabilities to the component to this existing component API without needing a new component altogether? Like that might sometimes that's an interesting approach, is to actually stand up something completely new and let it see the
Mm-hmm.
differences.
Mm-hmm.
That probably would be if I'm not successful here, then that would be my next approach.
Also, something that I will do sometimes is switch this to a like a dictation style. So I'll just use like Mac OS's like dictation, so I'm not typing all this out because it kind of can get annoying to have this chat interaction. It's really interesting that it's giving me like after the tool call, it looks like it's stuck, but it's not. It finished its thought. But yeah, your notion that you're suggesting earlier, just like starting over and starting fresh, like that is sometimes what works better for me is like I try it one pass, I'm like, I got close, but I think if I started over and approached it differently, maybe I'll get a different outcome. And sometimes I do.
Mm-hmm.
It works a little bit better. Um, yeah, sometimes like a fresh mind or fresh thinking pattern or different approach works. Stop, Duo. Stop thinking. this might be more true to um, building components in pajamas than it is necessarily for building the like crud in the monolith, but I feel like there's way more nuance of like having to nail down all the different interaction s- modalities, if that makes sense. Like keyboard,
Hmm.
hover, that stuff. Because like if I'm using a button from pajamas, it's baked in, so I don't have to worry about that. But when I'm creating a new button, then I have to worry about all those details. And I think that's what makes this particularly challenging in comparison to like framing up a new feature, which in GitLab is probably more about like how do you get the right data to present, how do you keep it performant, because it's like the pieces to construct the UI more or less are there. Um, it's just a matter of like getting it to play right, unless you're doing something that's completely novel. Then again, you're doing both. You're both having to deal with the challenge of pulling and showing data in a performant way, but also then having to think through every single interaction along the way.
Hmm.
Okay. So, okay. Uh, yeah, this is a good example where like it started going down the right path and then it started breaking everything. So like I'm pretty close to just being like, "Oh, I'm just gonna ditch these changes and try again. Not ditch all the changes, but ditch the ones of trying to get the keyboard interaction in."
I haven't looked at the CSS under the hood of this too, but Claude's like, CSS is getting too complex. So it's even recognizing like this is crazy. Like I'm just fighting styles. Um, yeah, I feel it. First sign of running out of steam on a thread here. Let's see.
this is like one of those changes where I'm like, I bet Mark could figure this out in like 2 hours.
Hmm.
And so maybe this is a different way that if I was the person that was responsible for just figuring out how do I get this nested dropdown component to be in there, I'd be like, hey, Mark, directionally, this is like where I want to go. Spin up MR and let's just start playing with it and tweak it as we go. Like visually, I think you kind of get the idea. Let's work through
Yep.
the logistics along the way. And then I could use Duo to help me explain things better. If I'm like, oh, okay, like this isn't exactly what we had in mind for the keyboard interaction. Here's how we could tweak it. Or just small things like, oh yeah, I don't feel like this style matches correctly. Like here's how we tweak it if I didn't have better understanding of the code base. See if you figured it out. You did not. It's sometimes so confident that it fixes it. And I'm like, no, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Let's see if you figured it out. No. It's still, it's doing something different, but functionally, it's not actually changing anything. So I'm gonna just try and tell, like, hey, you're not working. Rethink your approach, but carefully, and examine the broader code base for better awareness. Sometimes that helps. So we'll see what I can come up with. Which, if this works, then I think that's just part of the nice benefit of having Duo locally in your repo is like then it really can just better understand what the heck's going on with all these other things because we've already built in a lot of functionality elsewhere that it can learn from. Like it's kind of like, what does GitLab do in these cases?
Hmm.
So hopefully it can unblock itself here. Because I really want to do like the next, if I can get it to just do this keyboard stuff correctly, the next thing I would want to do is like the first sub menu item is just like a regular list of disclosure items. I want to have like the another item with a sub menu to be I want to have the what do we call it? The collapsible list box. Like I want to have the selectable options in it.
Now you're getting crazy.
You
Because
know, that's what I want to try next. If I
well,
can get it to even manage
yeah.
to show that.
Now now technically uh like disclosure is pretty open. Like you can put stuff in there, whatever you want. So you could put a list box in there. You should be able to put anything in that nested. You
Oh,
know, it
check
could
this
be
out. It's going back and forth.
yeah. Uh
That's pretty
but
slick.
the only thing is I want to keep the concept of list box like separate for the time being in the sense of disclosure can contain anything, but like a list box that has nested list box, that's like a different thing. So as long as those two don't get conflated, that's kind of my thought there. But
Yeah, I guess where I'm thinking about this would be like if we were talking about a like the filtered search where you get a list of options and you pick like we kind of force you to pick everything first. I'll just pull up a so it's like you get the disclosure box, right? But if this was a nested option, I wouldn't have to necessarily click this to get the next thing. So let's just assume it was like the is case. Like I could then have the nested option be the labels to pick from it. So then I wouldn't have to do click, click. I could theoretically go, label and then pick the next thing
uh,
in the list.
got it. That's an interesting use case. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, so that's separate than than yeah, I'm struggling to think of like the exact use case for nested options, but it's basically like if you chose one setting and then like there were other settings under that, that you could change. Like um so but I like where you're headed with that thought.
Yeah, and again, like this isn't meant to be like, oh, we're gonna merge this code today. It's like this is mostly meant to be like a more robust prototype that's just GitLab flavored. Something that we could submit an MR for, not to
Yeah,
merge, but to like be like, hey, like try it out. See what you think. Like, does this help kind of
got
unblock
it.
where you would want to go with it? Not that I really understand how to use this at all, but like in theory, you could use like the different slot options to play with it and customize it to your own data set and see how it feels.
Mm-hmm.
They give it, I'm scared to even ask it like, okay, on, um, what's it?
What's interesting is that you were able to get to where you got without providing visual context as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I wonder if that's because of what exists today. If this was net new, like how much more verbose you'd have to be. But
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I think it is very helpful just as like the person driving the ship to know visually like where you want to go, more or less.
hmm
But you're right, like it can look in our code base like, oh, a chevron makes sense here. This is how they use chevrons. Let's use a chevron in this way. Sometimes it pulls very silly icons for the wrong things, but that's okay. What I sometimes run into with like Claude as just like an example, it'll just use like emojis sometimes or like
mm
characters in place of not having the right things.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, unless you're doing something like super novel, like let's say creating like a visualization chart, it's probably going to do a pretty decent pass at sticking to like stylistically how GitLab UI feels. but it's gotten better about this, but sometimes it will use like the wrong Tailwind classes. And I think some of the fault comes from maybe it being written incorrectly somewhere else already in the repo, and then it thinks that's the right thing. I'm trying to think of
Interesting.
where I've run into a situation. Oh, like sometimes I notice people use the wrong way to tell a font to be bold. I can't remember off the top of my head if it's like GL
Hmm.
dash font dash bold or something, or if it's GL like text bold, whatever it is. And then Duo copies the wrong pattern and then it doesn't apply the bold state. And you go, oh, actually, like the proper Tailwinds class here is this.
Interesting.
So sometimes like the bugs in our repo can cause it to do the wrong thing because it just assumes it's the right thing.
Hmm. So I got to a certain point with Claude that I just
Oh, it
committed
did
it.
it.
And,
Ooh. Okay. Almost, it almost did it. Okay. Okay, we got a little closer. So
yeah.
my goal this time was like when you're using a mouse, you can see how it like pops up
Hmm.
next to it, which is cool, but with the keyboard, like you'd also want it to be visual without having to necessarily open it. So I can
Yep.
go in it, but if I go to the next item, then we end up with duplicate of
Double.
ones. Yeah. So gotta give it some
What
encouragement.
yeah, it is getting somewhere. What I started to do, I paused on the current deal because I got up to the same point where it came down to like the CSS and whatnot is I can't even get through that to do anything. Now keep in mind I'm not actually opening up the files and making changes. Like I could do that with CSS, but I'm wanting the tool to
Give you
try
a
to do it
directive.
as much
Yeah.
as that as possible. So anyhow, I've opened up GitLab Duo agent, the agentic chat, and I'm giving a go with it creating a net new component and seeing what happens there. So
It's getting there. Very nice, Duo. Good job. Let's see. Okay, so what I'm now nitpicking it on is if I go to a nested item and I pick it, it just closes the nested menu, which I assume we'd want it to close the whole menu, like both of them, not just the sub item. Let's see. Well, sometimes I feel like I'm on like a good streak. I start getting just like real nice to Duo. All right, now I'm gonna give it my crazy idea just to see if it can.
How's the hover state like that? Did that work?
That still
Runtime?
needs some polish, you know? Like it still definitely needs to get cleaned up a little bit, but it's not bad. I'm not seeing the same like overlapping problem before. It's, not like perfect, but yeah, sometimes I can sometimes get it in a weird state. Not really sure. I really don't know how this happens. Like, why does it think it's at the lower viewport? But that's one of those things where like I'm guessing probably pretty hard to describe well enough for it to properly fix, which is why I'm moving on to the just the functionality piece of like, could I have both a nested drop down, but also maybe like a nested um, collapse
Yeah,
or list box?
so there are like you can see like the custom list item story and or miscellaneous content. You could start there and say, okay, can one of the nested disclosures contain miscellaneous content like this example does? And um, because it technically should be able to put everything in there. Or like, can you say, can you put an instance of our list box in the nested dropdown? That could possibly do that too.
Hmm. Yeah, because this is like looks like the drop down, but with a select or a list box from there. Yeah, of course, linear as examples. Um,
Have you experienced where Duo, I'm trying to say GitLab Duo every time, where it'll start to show an answer and then it'll like remove it and go back to thinking and then it'll populate it again and keep going.
like it kind of pops in and out content as it's like
Yeah,
writing. Yeah,
yeah.
that I think there's an issue in like the Duo chat like bug backlog to kind of address that. But yeah, it does do that. It's gotten better. It's like less prevalent, but it does do like that random pop in of things and then they disappear and then they come back again. All right, now Duo's giving me a fork in the road to choose from because this is quite complex, as it would admit. Do I want to create a generic nested dropdown item that accepts any custom content via a slot, or create a specific component that combines the nested dropdown behavior with the list style box selection? I'm going to say the first. But I mean, s- at baseline, like where we have this change right now, like I think it would be even worth pushing up the branch to the repo just so you could have like a discussion with Nick about it. Like, sure, we got to work out some of the like hotspot quirks. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell, is it using the it's hard to see on the screen share, but it looks like it's using the same styles, the same shadow and whatnot.
I did ask
Uh,
it to like mimic it perfectly.
okay. How is Yeah, so it's just missing like that little bit of overlap, like where it
Oh
would
yeah,
overlap the
I
main.
asked it to not overlap for just a minute, but I could ask it to slide over a couple pixels.
I had like an
Again,
overlap of I think negative like 8 or something, but
yeah, I guess I could look over at that Figma. I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the second one is what's going to be weird, because like you would hit the right key and it would open on the left.
which
Which
if
what can you do about that? I don't really know.
well, I'm okay
But
with that because the chevron is indicating more, it's not indicating direction. And
yeah.
when I looked at other examples, that was like the exact pattern that all of them that I looked at had. Uh, so I'm not, and I think I noted that in that issue, but that was the yeah, that was my perspective on that one. Uh, and I think even just looking here, I'm looking to see if anything in my Mac menu has stuff on the side. I'm not sure if it does.
So it went and created a new story for a nested dropdown with custom content, except it added the list box with the button. So it's like the option, it's like select an option, and then those items come up.
Like
So now
not
I'm
that
like,
custom.
no, that's still too crazy. I just want the menu items in the nested container. I want the functionality of being able to select, but I don't want it to close it.
We have a half hour to be successful.
I think we're gonna get there. You got the Redwoods meetup?
I think I do. There's one.
Gosh, I keep thinking like, okay, there's one more thing I want to add. There's one more thing. Like, can I also add in the searchable slot? It's like it's right now, it's retaining what I've selected. I'm trying to tell it not to close.
I think why I never came across the hover problem was because the story that it created never had two consecutive items with that are parents, which is again another thing that you probably wouldn't think of with design intent. So
Okay, so instead of doing searchable, I'm gonna have it just be a multi-select. I feel like that's probably more likely, wanting to be able to do multi-select.
have you tried the mobile behavior? Because that was one of the key requirements is having it collapse and do the slide over.
Definitely isn't aware of the viewport. So we'd have to do something like it has like with the viewport positioning.
Well, it's just yeah, at a small
Right.
breakpoint, it is kind of what we had determined was it was more not based on viewport detection. It was based on media query.
Hmm. Nope, haven't got to that part yet. We give it any more like consideration to whether or not it makes sense to still cap the max height of the box itself. I'm not saying for this change. I'm now on an entirely different tangent.
Ah, boy, it's a good question.
I think it's come up a couple times, but I've forgotten like where the discussion landed because this just as an example, like it's a rather long list, but like it's a
Yeah.
list that could certainly fit within my desktop screen size, no problem.
Yeah.
And I just kind of have to hate that I have to, well, first of all, I don't even necessarily always know like what is beneath the fold of the drop down itself. But it does like just feel a little more, I think you like to use this word kludgy for me to have to like scroll to find
Mhm.
that option at the bottom and then, accidentally hit the bottom, end up scrolling the page accidentally and like, oh my God, I'm just looking for the search within, but it's all at the bottom and
Yeah. I think a lot of that's driven by like some of the like label drop down or things that have like known massive lists potentially.
check this out,
To
Jeremy.
do
I've
it
got
for,
I've got a searchable box now.
yeah, you do. I
That's
want to
pretty
see that
slick.
responsive behavior though.
No, that's not gonna work yet. Um, did you have like a mock-up where you wanted the responsive behavior to? Okay. You want to create like a
The parent
V.
item becomes the
Mhm.
back when you're nested. Yeah.
Mhm.
Unless, and I will throw this caveat out there, unless you have like a different solution for how this nested level could be presented on a smaller viewport, and then that could be concepted too.
Off the top of my head, no. Um, and considering we're getting close to the end of our like pairing session today, we could pick it up next time.
Right, right.
But I mean, we this got pretty darn far. Like we've got a nested menu that you can get to both by hover and keyboard. It does need a little bit of TLC to get just like the menus to populate correctly or just, pushing it around. But like functionally, I think this is at least the direction that was being described in that issue.
Yeah.
Would this maybe get absolutely torn apart in a code review? Yeah, probably, but it's okay.
While you've been working through that, I'd started fresh with just trying to create a brand new component, and it got really far really quick. But again, it's hanging up on styles, which is really interesting. And I know we're slated to go till the half hour, but if you're like, yeah, we're like this is a good stopping point, or you want to summarize stuff and wrap it up, whatever you feel is appropriate is totally fine by me.
Yeah, the last I kind of like well, I get stuck in this like just one more thing. Just sure one more thing. Let's make one more thing in there. First, I'll make sure I didn't like completely botch the storybook. Because I'm telling it, I'm like, we don't really need like two independent examples. Like, go ahead and see if you can combine them into one. But in doing so, it created a broke something.
It's still pretty crazy to be doing these tasks, though. Like if you think of what we were doing a year ago.
Oh, yeah. I mean, no, we're close. Oh, it did. Oh, it did do it. I'm sorry. Duo, I told you you did the wrong thing, but you actually did it. You did combine them. It's okay. If you break it worse. Yeah, I won't pick it any further on that.
Have you noticed it's speeding up though?
Yeah, for whatever reason, like just moving on to a new chat, it's been much faster in responding. I'm just
I know
asking it.
mine was pretty laggy at first, and it's gotten quite a bit quicker.
Yeah, it can be one of those things too. Like if Claude is getting hit pretty hard, or if they have an outage, like it impacts Duo because that's just the model that we're pulling from, which is not as obvious to us as an end user. We are just like, why is Duo slow? And then like turns out like, oh, actually it's peak hours for Claude, and therefore they're also getting hit pretty heavy.
I'm surprised that it's tripping up so much over CSS though.
Claude?
Well, yeah, I'm using GitLab Duo, but yeah, with
Oh, yeah.
on.
Yeah. I feel like the CSS part is where I've had to probably cover the most manual touch points. It's like, okay, it got like 70% of the way there. I'll need to adjust this with Tailwinds to just like get it just right. So if I were like, okay, if we ignore the mobile state piece,
Hmm.
um, what I would be doing next if I was like, okay, I'm pretty happy with this, I would then be asking Duo to like comb through the changes as if they were a principal level engineer doing my code review and look for refactoring opportunities or places to synthesize stuff together and then update any specs accordingly. Probably in like incremental steps. I wouldn't try and one shot all of that. I go piece by piece. Like,
Hmm.
okay, let's put you in like reviewer mode now. You're a principal level engineer and you're reviewing this code change. The first thing you look for is like refactoring opportunities. But sometimes it's like good. It's like, oh, you got failing specs. You need to refactor this. And I think we can consolidate these two functions together, and it looks like you have a linting error. I'm like, cool, yeah, go fix all those things. It's like, okay, I'll go do all that. I'm like, okay, great. But depending on the day, I have varying levels of success.
Mhm.
But right now, we've got a nested collapse
I'm
loop.
curious if you do the negative overlap. I'm curious if you're running into the same shadow problems I'm having.
Interestingly, when I go from, oh, I get a weird bug where I go to the first search and I go down, jumps to the unselected item. It's weird. I can try. Um, so we want to make them overlap by like 8 pixels, right?
Yeah. I got it to work in my first effort, but this one now is
Nested.
like it cannot figure it out. Like, and I can't like I can't just show it an image to be like for it to be like, oh, you're right. Yeah, that's I see what you mean.
Let's see.
It's the other thing is that would be nice is if the placeholder text in
Like
GitLab
this, Jeremy?
Duo. Oh, um, yeah, yeah, like half of that probably, but yeah, it got the shadow right. So
Okay, so maybe a 4 pixel overlap instead of an 8.
yeah, it's hard to tell from the screen share. I think I
Yeah, let
used.
me drop it to normal 100%.
Yeah, you're right. Four. That's what I have in Figma too. Sorry about that. But what I was saying is in GitLab Duo, the placeholder text for the prompt is like, what should we tackle next? But Duo just asked me like, hey, inspect this and let me know
Mm,
what shows up. So it's like that prompt or that that placeholder in the prompt should be more tied to what it just asked me to do. Like that's kind of interesting.
so it did that, but I noticed it kind of create like a little regression where now it like just opens the nested menu on top of where the other one was. But I want it to positionally open, not open the
Mm.
same location. So we
So
can
it did,
fix that.
did too many changes.
Hmm. It might have just, unintended side effects. But you know what? We gotten this far. We got 10 minutes. We can fix this little positioning thing. I'll just tell it, hey, it's on like a mobile screen or mobile device. I want you to do something different because we can't have these overlapping menus on small screen and just
Mm.
see what it does. See like what it comes up with
Yeah,
as like a solution for that because maybe it can come up with a better idea than what's in our heads.
yeah, it's interesting.
That's also where I've had some fun with Duo too, is I'm like describing the problem that I want to avoid and just being like, see what you come up with. And I'm like, oh no, I don't like that. Try like a different angle. Then it tries again. They're like, ah, I don't like that. Try again. Um, but as we come up at the end of our time, what do you want me to do? You want me to just push up this branch and I could link a Nick and just be like, hey, like Jeremy and I were kind of playing with your proposal. Um, just vibe coding it.
Yeah.
How does this kind of like
Yeah.
feel? What's even cool and nice about like the design system too is like because we still build the review apps, like no one has to even like set it up locally. They can just open their review app directly to
Hmm.
the component and they can get that little sandbox right there.
Yeah. I think that would be great. And I don't recall if I've applied the Figma Make deal, but between like that and this, or if I've mentioned that in that issue, but by having both, and it's like I know Nick knows exactly like what this should do and like has examples of what it should look like. So it's just interacting with it in our context.
Hmm.
Yeah.
All right, dude, don't let me down here. No. Yeah, now struggling with positioning, which this might be like what it's thinking is a problem is like destroying and rendering the next drop down in the DOM. Like it's kind of like reusing the same one, so it's getting stuck. It's just like, oh, it's open, so just like replace the contents. But really, I'm like,
Hmm.
you kind of need to destroy it and open a new one every time. Hoping that will.
That's interesting though that that one change to just move the position did that.
Yeah, I don't think it was moving it over a couple pixels. I was already kind of having this problem, but I wasn't bugging it about
Mm.
it.
Got it.
Um, yeah, it's one of those like I don't know when it was necessarily introduced. It's- hey, there you go.
Yeah, that's nice. Question for you. I think I know the answer, but would you find a navigation or a disclosure like this helpful in the product? I know, I guess you've already identified one good use case for it with filtering, but I'm curious if you could see
Yeah,
other uses.
I think you're seeing this being even asked in like the vulnerability report stuff on the security side. I think Becca's asked for some of this kind of functionality too. But yeah, I think our inability to have these nested drop downs kind of creates the a different problem that we end up working around, which is like you list more items there, or you create an entirely different interaction pattern to work around the fact that you're limited to just one drop down.
Yeah,
I think the reason we've probably put this off, like even just going through this today, like you can see how many subtleties of interaction points you have to get right in order for this to just work.
yeah,
Um, and I don't know if that is sometimes understood when it's just like, just let us do a nested drop down. And it's like, yeah, but we gotta go
yeah.
write some math to like make the tangentials feel like they feel right. Like we got to make sure that the keyboard interactions for all these things do what we would expect it to do. And
It
then when you
announces correctly. It handles voice control. It respects edge detection and responsive, like and dark
right,
mode, and like, yeah,
right.
yeah,
And that is hard, but I think where this helps is like you said, like I could turn on screen reader right now and go try it. Or, Trevor could
hmm
try it out. It's like, is this pretty close or is it far off? And then maybe we can get a little bit closer, a little bit closer. But it's so hard to just like outline all that in Figma. And then when you get that whole laundry list of things to go do, then it becomes, oh, this is so much work. I don't want to bother doing it. So if we can
yeah,
somehow compress the amount of work, that would help us find those opportunities to either extend upon the design system or make it more robust, as opposed to saying, sorry, don't have capacity because I can't go do all those things. Plus, I got to find an engineer to do it.
hmm yeah. I
And the only
think
thing I can't figure out is like,
y-
okay, this part's bugging me. Like when I open it and I go to the options and it goes to search, which is great. The first key down, it goes to the second option, but it can get to the first one. So I don't know why
did
that
you experience
happens.
that bug in the nested drop down as it is, or the
Hmm,
list box?
I guess I didn't try.
You'll have to do the one with search probably.
Yeah, no.
No, that is interesting. Yeah, back to the point about like a year ago, what would I be doing? I would probably open up CodePen and semantically type out an unordered list with nested lists and then start to layer on styling and functionality from there. That's probably how I would handle it. And if I was starting this from scratch, I might even do that like
Hmm.
uh with with Claude or something, is provide like here's the like the just the markup for the underlying structure. Now let's make it interactive. Let's make these things properties and these things slots. Uh, that would be another approach I would consider taking, so that the underlying structure I know is correct. Because now that's what I would do here is like go backwards. Like, okay, it looks right, it feels right, but is it really right under the hood?
Yeah, totally.
Lots of angles to take. I think that's
Hmm.
what
Hmm.
this represents. I was hoping for more of a slam dunk, and honestly, it's probably naive thinking like it's just a disclosure. It's just like, Arya expanded like you know, Aria, yeah, Aria collapsed or whatever. I get those mixed up. There's only one of those, but
For what it's worth, I
um,
am very happy with what we were able to get to in just
yeah,
this couple of
yeah,
hours.
yeah, I agree. I think that's another way to frame it too, is just in a few hours. Uh,
Hmm.
maybe I'm getting like the microwave syndrome where everything has to feel like so much faster, but it's like, oh, it's only mid-morning and like this is what we've achieved, like so that's not bad.
I mean, like, look at the number of like deep threads, or just like the number of
Mhm.
like the density of these commentary around theoreticals. This moves it from like theoretical Figma screenshots to like, okay, now we can actually talk about what does accessibility feel like trying to get to those sub menu items
Yeah.
and going back and forth in the tree.
Yeah. And what are some of the complexities that we encountered? What are with
Right.
styles and keyboarding and function and mouse
Hmm.
interaction and how do we weight what needs to be done uh, as far as edge detection and responsive and yeah, there's a lot to it. So that's good stuff.
Cool. Well, I definitely appreciate you giving me an option to play around with for today. This was fun. And it was
Yeah.
even fun that it was like in the design system and not in like the mono repo. So that's a fun different way of working.
Hmm. It was rewarding to see your approach and probably not incredibly different. And to have like confidence that like, oh, it's some of the same, we're running into some of the same problems. So that would even one of the learnings I would take away is like, like refactoring CSS in the future, is that worth it? Because if we want AI to help speed up some of our development workflows and it can't even understand our current CSS enough to like replicate it or build upon it, then maybe there are things that are just too complex in there, and maybe that leads to performance gains elsewhere, and so there could be other things that are learnings from it. So
Yeah, and I almost feel like in that spirit, maybe engineering would be better to take on those massive refactoring efforts.
mhm.
Mhm. Because they have a better understanding of like where this is going to break. Um, but it maybe does like help us balance out like how can we all contribute in ways that we're best able to. By the way,
Yeah.
it fixed the jumping to the second item. So
Oh, cool, cool. What was it? Did it say what the problem was?
um said I see the issue when you press down arrow from the search input, the focus index starts at 0, then gets incremented to 1, so it focuses on the second item. And the problem is that the keyboard handler doesn't know if the event is coming from the search input or a list item. So it
Mhm.
refactored the story to adjust that.
Got it. It's not adding tab index though, is it?
I don't think so. And what do you mean by tab index? Like, does
Like
tab work
like it.
or
Well, no, like tab index equals 0, tab index equals 1. Like literally trying
hmm,
to write in the tab order.
I don't think so. I mean, that change was purely rewriting the if statement for arrow down and changing what number it starts with. So I don't think so. But
Cool.
I can let you go. I will give it a shot. See if I can figure out how to make it do something when there's not enough screen real estate
Hmm.
to make it feel coherent.
Yeah, I think that's great. Um, Question, quick, can GitLab Duo take context from like just general websites or anything?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Yeah, that's definitely a limitation that has. It's not allowed to browse the internet.
Okay. Got it. Oh, that's right. That sounds familiar now that you phrase it that way. Okay.
Hmm. Yeah. So it's like very useful for the things that it can touch,
Got it.
or at
Okay.
least like it's gotten a lot better with the things that it can touch. So yeah, you can't just say like, hey, look at the design system. But in theory, since you're working within, like in this case, since like GitLab UI is now like the design system and it shares the same repo, like it could
Mm,
parse through everything related to our design system. So it should better understand our spacing patterns because it could look at our guidelines on it and go, oh, this is when you space things and when you don't,
yeah,
or how much to put between elements.
got it.
Yeah,
Well, this has been great. I appreciate you setting up the time and making time for it. Super
yeah, of
helpful.
course. I'll post the recording and share with the team.
All right. Do people get awards for watching the 3 hour marathon?
I don't know, but Justin asked for me to share it, and yeah, they're welcome to watch if they'd like.
That's right.
But
Only
I
an
mean,
hour and a half at 2x.
I mean that is like technically how I'm learning is I'm watching other people just like build stuff with Lovable or
Yeah.
Cursor or what have you, and I'm not watching it at all times, but I like listen out like oh they did something unique. Okay, that's something I can maybe do.
Yep.
Um, and then yeah,
Cool.
you got to see me struggle of like oh it's just it's not responding.
Yeah.
What do we do about that? What are ways around it for now? And those
Yep.
problems may not exist in 3 months and it's no longer relevant, but that is kind of this nature of the AI world right now is like what worked 6 months ago probably isn't the best thing to do today, and vice versa.
Hmm.
Like we'll just need to figure out
Yeah.
what to do.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks again.
Sure thing, Jeremy. Catch you later.
All right. Enjoy your day.